It tears me down because I think about as a child when we had fire drills and tornado drills and they taught us, crouch down and cover your head. And I remember we would have these routine drills and I really believed that a tornado was going to come.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brand John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2 1 2 1 2. Testing 1 2. Does this thing still work, John?
I think everything still works. Brad, when you say that, are you looking downward or are you talking about the radio?
That is John Combest, Combest. We haven't been on. It's been a week, John. What's going on with this? How come we haven't done it?
Well, we did have a major national holiday,
Yes.
so I think we could give ourselves a little grace. Plus, one of us is pushing 100 years old, so what do you expect?
And yesterday morning, when I should have been here on the air, I was in the hospital. So we'll talk about that later, maybe. That is John Combest, Combest, every single day of his life, as opposed to doing this radio show. But every single day of his life, he puts together this incredible website called johncombest.com. Once again, Combest. And what does he do? He puts all these stuff that you should know that's going on in the state of Missouri. Nothing fancy, sort of like a Drudge Report of the state of Missouri. And sometimes like 2, 3, 4 dozen, sometimes 5 dozen stories on there. But what we do is we bring this gentleman in here, and what's your name again, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what's your job again?
We're on our way to the number one.
We count them down, and we start off with John's.
In third place.
The post office delivers through rain, through sleet, through snow. Well, maybe they don't deliver when the weather's nice in the spring. And that's the theme of a story from the latest Washington Missourian piece, brought to us by Jeff Folsom. You heard of Folsom Prison Blues. This is Folsom Post Office Blues. Here's the headline from Mr. Folsom. Late Franklin County mail ballot issue brought to the feds. If we go back to the April municipal elections in Franklin County, County Clerk Tim Baker mailed out a whole lot of ballots, Brad. 690 to be exact. That's the number of folks that actually requested an absentee ballot. And then when Tim Baker was looking at them coming in, he noticed that only 236 of those ballots were received in time to count. He thought that was a little bit fishy. And Tim said, that's the first time, quote, that's the first time that has ever been that low. We normally get about 80 to 90% back from the post office, but this one was very concerning. And Tim Baker did what you do if you got a challenge in the 2nd Congressional District, and his first call was to Kris Cook from Ann Wagner's office. Brand, you and I have talked about Kris Cook before. When you need something in the 2nd Congressional District and you need something to get done, go to Kris Cook.
He gets things done.
Kris started the conversation with the feds and with Ann Wagner. I should point out, too, that, Kris works for Ann Wagner. So they began the conversation. And we're going to fast forward to Ann Wagner demanding action from the Office of the Inspector General. So fast forward, Brad, to August 2025. An audit from that office found 2.5 million pieces of mail were delayed at the St. Louis Processing and Distribution Center over a 2-day period. That's the most of any audit in history. Think about that, Brad. The most of any audit in history. Now, Jeff Folsom reports the issue was worsened by management, instructing employees to hide the delays in their data system, the release noted. This is from a press release from Ann Wagner's office, summarizing what the Office of the Inspector General found. Other issues included staffing vacancies, unchecked truancy, and incomplete maintenance, which helped lead to 40% of outbound trucks being delayed or canceled. Now, in the category of Brad being right about something, and it happens once in a blue moon, Tim Baker noted that his office has a good relationship with the post office and the postmaster in Union. He said, quote, "They do extremely well to help us every chance they can, but they can't control St. Louis." And Brad, here's where your piece of insight comes in about the mail. Tim Baker said that another issue is no longer having separate, quote, in town, unquote, and, quote, out of town, unquote, boxes at the post office. And Tim says, if we still had in-town boxes, we wouldn't have this kind of problem because everything now gets sent to St. Louis to get sent back out here. And then the final thing that I would note is that Tim Baker says, I'm extremely happy that this did not fall on deaf ears. And he praises Kris Cook. He says Kris has been very good about keeping in contact with us on things that are happening. And so, Brad, before we get into your discussion of this, we should note that Ann Wagner says that things have already started improving. So she shows some measurement of 86% of first-class mail is now being delivered on time and enhancing customer service protocols and, quote, best practices for tracking and coordinating absentee ballots. So Kris Cook's efforts via Ann Wagner's efforts have already had some improvement in the area when it comes to this. But your point is well taken, Brad. As long as local mail is sent to St. Louis and then we expect it to come back to Franklin County, it's ridiculous, isn't it, Brad?
The whole thing is, first off, let me give you one little anecdote. This has just happened to me yesterday. I mailed a fairly important document. It didn't have to be there next day, but it had to be there within a couple of days. A fairly important document to a company I deal with in Ohio, okay? Let's move east. We go east on 70. We're in Illinois. We're in Indiana. Then we're in Ohio. So we're talking, 6-7 hour drive to be in Ohio.
Yeah,
Wouldn't
you could drive it yourself there in about 6.5 hours, probably.
And it was tracked. I had the tracking on it. This is what the envelope wasn't the next day air envelope, but it was the what they call it, the priority mail. Okay, 2 to 3 day delivery. I mailed it on the 23rd of November. It got there yesterday. I'm going like, what the hell is this?
Unbelievable.
So, and secondly, the interesting part of this is you and I have talked about this before. Back in the day, in the Washington Post Office and in the Union Post Office, and to a certain extent, other post offices, like the St. Charles Post Office used to have that as well, too. You go in there, and there are 2 slots, in town, out of town. And if you dropped your stuff in Washmo, and it was going to a 63090 zip code, it stayed right there in Washmo. Now, and I think you even talked about this, didn't you tell me one of the congressional guys was bemoaning the fact that the mail from the boot heel comes into St. Louis now? Isn't that the one?
Yeah, that was Congressman Jason Smith. He said if you mail a letter from the extreme boot heel across town, it goes to St. Louis, and then it goes back to the boot heel.
I have a friend, a guy I do business with in Springfield, Illinois. I sent him a cashier's check. I told this story before. I sent him a cashier's check, same thing. A priority mail was supposed to get there in like 2 to 3 days. It took 10 days for it to get to Springfield, Illinois, which is like you jump in your car without all the snow and everything like that. You can be in Springfield, Illinois in like easy 90 to 120 minutes. I mean, easy, hour and a half to 2 hour drive. And it's just, I don't understand it. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And especially when we go through all the administrations where they're saying, we've got to cut down on global warming. Well, think about that for a minute. If you mail something in Washington or Union or St. Charles and you put it in the old days, you put it in the in-town slot, the only energy that was required to put that thing into somebody's mailbox was for it to be put in the truck, the delivery vehicle, the next day. You know what I'm saying, John? But instead, it goes in a truck that goes downtown St. Louis, and then it gets processed, and it comes back in a truck from downtown St. Louis out to Washington or Union or St. Charles or whatever, and then it gets into the delivery vehicle. It makes no sense at all. I don't get it. I'll never understand it.
Well, I would assume, Brad, in terms of bureaucracy, there are probably people at the national level who say we want to be able to show that our big processing facilities handle a huge volume of mail. So let's bring everything to these facilities so I, the bureaucrat, can take credit for the sheer volume of stuff that comes through. That's my only explanation for it.
But obviously they can't handle it. That's the problem.
Well, yeah, they can't, Brad, which probably means they need more money and more staff. More money is always the answer, I think.
Yeah, that's how I heard that. Okay, ready for number 2?
Yeah, let's do it.
In third place.
Oh, hold on a minute. That was number 3. Man, give me a couple days off and I screw up. Okay, now let's try number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
a couple big things happening this week. And one, I guess you could say, is the end of an era, excuse me, and an opportunity for new technology to come forward. And then the beginning of another era. I think you know where I'm going with the latter, but you might not know the former, Brad. This week, adult websites, and we're going to be, like we were 2 weeks ago, we're going to be very careful what words we say here because we don't want YouTube to slap us on the wrist here. Adult-oriented websites in which a percentage of content might appeal to your prurient interests have now been given an ultimatum by the state of Missouri. Either they verify users' age, excuse me, to ensure that minors are kept away from this content, or they just close up shop. And one major website, whose name we won't say here on YouTube, decided that they will not be serving people in the state of Missouri at all. And so, Brad, I think the fascinating thing about this, before we get to the second half of this week's events, the first part I think that's fascinating is Kurt Erickson of the Post-Dispatch, I should give him credit for this piece, and I have a link up today, points out that VPNs, virtual private networks, have seen an uptick in use and downloading. So you're more of an expert than I am, Brad. But VPNs, excuse me, essentially divert your traffic somewhere else and use a remote server so you could bypass restrictions. So if you were in the state of Missouri and you were dead set on getting some adult content, but now you can't get it because of these regulations from the state of Missouri or these threats from the state of Missouri, you can now get on a VPN and then access all the adult content you want. So, Brad, let's put a pin in that for 1 second, and we can come back to that piece. But, of course, the second piece, the second event that's a big deal this week, was yesterday's opening of sports betting in the state of Missouri. And I have a collection of stories up today, including photo galleries from downtown St. Louis of people placing the first legal bets in the state of Missouri. A guy named Trent Green, who opened up the door for Kurt Warner to come in and become Rams quarterback and lead the Rams to the Super Bowl. Trent Green was there promoting the advancement of sports betting in the state of Missouri. So the good news for everyone, Brad, for people who love to stare at their phone and look at certain content on their phone, and now they're blocked from that. They were blocked from that on November 30th, but on December 1st, they can go download a sports app and start, thumb-loving their phone and placing sports bets. So we can replace one addictive behavior with another. That's pretty good news, don't you think?
John, I saw that article. Hold on a minute. Are you referring to the article in the St. Louis stlpr.org? Is that the article you're talking about?
I have multiple up, including that one, yeah.
Okay, and they also have pictures of Trent Green. They have pictures of Isaac Bruce and all these famous sports celebrities from days gone by. And the interesting thing about it was, maybe it was the weather, but they said there was like nobody there yesterday. Big deal.
Yeah, and they attribute it to the weather. I think the Post-Dispatch headline even calls out the snowy weather.
You know how I stand about this. The crazy thing about this was one of the quotes in that article, the guy says, well, I used to have to drive into Illinois to place my sports bets. Now I can just do it right here in Missouri. Oh, my God.
Brad, I'm not sure exactly what geography that guy's from, but I'm guessing if I had to stereotype, I'd say somewhere maybe he's from L.A., like Lower Arnold.
I guess. I don't know.
If you're using that accent. Brett, you mentioned snow. Can we get to story number one?
We can. Here it is.
The number one.
MoDOT under fire today and yesterday about its treatment of the latest Snowmageddon. And I guess the argument is it probably wouldn't have been Snowmageddon if MoDOT had treated the roads in time. And in short, MoDOT's argument for why there were so many troubles on the highways in the St. Louis area yesterday was that MoDOT expected the snow to roll in around 4 p.m., but the snow came much earlier, around 11 a.m., and was much heavier all at one time than MoDOT anticipated. Now, I have links up today, one to a KSDK video one to a Post-Dispatch video of a press conference from MoDOT. A guy named Bob Becker stood up and faced the music. I'd also point out that a number of elected officials took to social media yesterday to criticize MoDOT's handling. We won't go into all the folks that tweeted and Facebooked about it, but it was a number of folks, Brad. And I guess this just goes to show that whether it's St. Louis City last year as it related to actual snow removal, or 2025, December 2025, and MoDOT handling the roads, if you get a little bit of traffic and you get a little bit of backup, somebody's got to pay the piper for this.
You know, the crazy thing about this was I watched this storm on the radar yesterday, and it was abundantly clear that, I mean, you could, early in the morning, you could see the storm was already through Kansas City. And you're going like,
yes, you're right, Brad.
And you're going like, okay, does nobody at MoDOT have the radar app on their phone? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And let me interrupt, Brad, because I thought of the same thing too, which is I understand if it's Friday and Saturday and Sunday, even on a holiday weekend, and you think, okay, here's what it looks like. It looks like we're going to need to deploy our trucks around, I'm making this up, Brad, 1 p.m. in advance of a 4 p.m. snowfall.
Right.
You would have the flexibility. You'd build in the flexibility to say, okay, as of Sunday morning, the forecast changed, so let's move everybody's shift up by 4 hours. I don't know how the logistics work, but it would seem that it should be that easy.
Well, and at least put them on standby. I mean, you know, like, I don't know what kind of pay shifts and everything like that they work, but wouldn't you think that the guys would be there at 8 o'clock in the morning already? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you would think so, Brad. But again, yeah, you and I don't know exactly how the staffing works, but I mean, the definition, in my opinion, would be to be flexible on this type of stuff, because Lord knows how fast a weather forecast can change. And I was surprised because, honestly, I had asked some people on Sunday, like, hey, what's the story? Do you think schools are going to be affected? And then I was surprised that the snow came so early and so heavy yesterday, but I hadn't been paying attention to the weather forecast, you know?
Well, Mark Cox, I listened to him this morning before I got in the air here on the way in, and he told the story, and this is an interesting story because normally when we think of things like this, we normally think that the city is a mess and the county is got their act together, at least MoDOT's got their act together. He lives in O'Fallon now, and he comes in on 40, goes all the way downtown. Their office is right there at Olive and Tucker. He said that on 40, it was one lane down to pavement from St. Charles County all the way to the city line, and once he hit the city line, all the lanes were open. And he's going like, okay, what the hell happened? How is it that the city can get all the lanes open, but MoDOT, which I think probably has much more of a higher number of employees and trucks and things like that, how is it that you get an interstate 6440, one lane from St. Charles County all the way to the city line, and the minute you hit the city of St. Louis line right there, I guess he was talking proper right there at McCausland, it's just like, okay, you're in another city. You are in another city, but it's like, okay, no snow here, all the lanes are open, and some of them, he said, were even to the point they looked like they were dry. How is that possible? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think yesterday, Scott Connell, I saw a clip from KSTK, said that the commute was the worst, or that the highway conditions were the worst he's seen in 35 years. Oh. And he described taking back roads to get to the KSDK office, I guess. And he was saying that because the roads weren't prepared, they just immediately became ice.
Oh, yeah. And that was the thing. Now, the crazy part of this is that a couple of weeks ago, like 2 or 3 days before the snow was supposed to hit, they were out doing the salt stuff, the brine stuff, because you see the white stripes on the highway on the overpasses and things like that. I didn't see any of those yesterday. It's to the point where guys, we can be armchair quarterbacks and sit here, but you look at this and you think, okay, we got a post office that doesn't do things correctly. We got MoDOT who screws things up. What goes on in government? Is nobody accountable? John, private sector, if there was a big screw up when you worked at Monsanto,
fired.
You'd be
fired.
Gone.
They would be fired.
Right, you would be
fired. If the parking lot at Monsanto wouldn't have been cleared on a halfway snowy day, whoever ran facilities would have their stuff in a cardboard box.
I'm telling you. And
I think you bring up a good point, Brad, which is, excuse me, every couple years, I don't know if it's every year, but every couple years, the directors of MoDOT face a lot of fire from state legislators. And state legislators show up at these funding hearings essentially, where MoDOT's asking for more money. And legislators show up with a list of failings of MoDOT and their district over the last year or two. And this is going to be a prime example.
Oh, boy, there's no doubt about it. And I just don't get it. I don't understand it. You go, well, let's move on. We need to go more.
I mean, the main thing is that we want to hear in B block and C block is, did the snowfall keep our favorite nonagenarian from getting to the hospital yesterday? And I'm guessing the answer is no.
No, I got there all right, but getting home was no fun. But that's a whole other story.